All right, everyone, Vladimir Putin defends traditional marriage, all the while HGTV actually features their first throuple, a husband with a couple of wives. We're going to take a look at why these two events, Putin's press conference and the progressives over at HGTV, actually signal the end of left-wing liberalism and the inevitable and unstoppable triumph of tradition. I think you're going to find the discussion very interesting. Greetings, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you. As always, a happy Friday to each and every one of you in the beginning of your weekend. If you haven't already done so, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. It'd be an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel as we analyze current events in light of super awesome conservative trends so you can live in the present in light of even better things to come. Now, before we begin, we want to make this channel even better for you. My team and I really want to know how we can better serve you and help you in your journey as excited and optimistic conservatives. We want to get your input. So if you click on the link below, you'll see a survey. It just takes a couple of minutes to fill out, but it's going to be so invaluable to us in learning how we can better serve you and make this channel even better. And if you participate, we're hoping to send a little gift your way as a token of our appreciation. And lastly, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video. That is the one, the only Bill O'Reilly, formerly of Fox News. Now, Bill has made millions investing over the years, and he wants to share with you his secrets on how he does it. So watch the free presentation at wealthwithbill.com. That's wealthwithbill.com. And discover how Bill O'Reilly plans to help you achieve a seven-figure net worth. Lucky participants receive a free hardcover of Bill's new book titled The United States of Trump. So don't wait. Click on the link below and check out what Bill has in store for you. You'll be glad you did. All right, so I want to juxtapose two fascinating events that happened over the last week because I think they're so instructive in precisely why we can expect to see the inevitable demise of liberal globalism. So let me start with what happened on HGTV. That's Home and Garden Television. Now, if you don't know, the only thing you really need to know about HGTV is how it consistently beats CNN for ratings, okay? CNN is consistently behind HGTV and the Food Network and Discovery Channel. That CNN is even offered on cable television seems to be more of a mercy mission at this point. So anyway, HGTV has this hit series. I've watched it a number of times. It's called House Hunters, and I'm sure many of you have seen it, okay? And it's, you know, and it's traditionally, that's a horrific word to use around the executives at HGTV, apparently, but nevertheless, they have traditionally featured couples who are looking for their dream house or at least to significantly upgrade and the like. And so they view some homes, I think usually like 3 homes. You get to view all the homes with them, and then they make their choice at the end, and you see that if you guessed which house they were going to pick, you know. A lovely show that only left-wing liberal progressivism, pathetic progressives, could possibly destroy, and it appears they have. Now, while House Hunters turned some heads a while back by featuring their first gay couple, okay, which has since then just become par for the course for them. But again, true to their progressive instincts that know no limits. What wasn't good enough, right, was just featuring these same-sex couples. Now they had an episode that featured what they call a throuple. That's 3 people in a polyamorous relationship. So the throuple was made up of 2 women and a man. They start off as a married couple, the man and woman, and then they met this other woman, and apparently they all fell in love with each other, and so they had some commitment ceremony, and now they all live together as a polyandrous relationship here. Now, polyamorous relationships are nothing new. Polygamy's been around forever, of course. What is new is that it's now apparently progressively hip to feature polyandrous relationships as normal and natural, as just another lifestyle choice and nothing more. And that's exactly what HGTV said in their defense of the episode. They said they don't, hey man, we don't discriminate or judge based on anyone's lifestyle choices. That's all their deal. So now on the other side of the world, as it were, literally within 24 hours of this throuple episode airing, the very next day, Russian President Vladimir Putin in a press conference declared that Russia was steadfastly opposed to ever legalizing so-called gay marriage and that the nation was unapologetically committed to maintaining, preserving, and protecting traditional marriage between man and woman as the foundation for a flourishing society. Now, Putin made it clear that the traditional notion of mother and father had, as he put it, absolutely no conceivable substitute. And he addressed specifically the absurdity of this trend in France and other places to designate the parents of children on their government-issued forms as parent one and parent two, un and trois, un, deux, sorry, trois, well, there you got your throuples, right? So, hey, you know, and who makes up parent two? Nobody has any idea, but hey, who cares, right? Now, the context of Putin's remarks involved the number of changes that he's proposed to Russia's constitution, which is an interesting issue in its own right. I'd like to make a video on that. But he said that gay marriage emphatically will not be one of those changes. Now, as many of you know, we've done a number of videos on this. Russia's going through a massive religious and civilizational revival right now. I think this is one of the primary reasons why the globalist West, frankly, hates Russia so much. Russia's rediscovered its Orthodox roots, and it's going through really nothing short of a Russian Orthodox renewal. And progressive left-wing sentiments have no place in that renewal period. Now, I think this juxtaposition between Putin's defense of traditional marriage and this TV program celebrating progressive lifestyle values with throuples, I think this throws into relief precisely why conservatives are winning and why progressives will inevitably destroy themselves. In other words, here's why we don't have to wait for conservatism to win. All we have to actually do is sit back and watch progressivism implode as a result of its own self-defeating entailments. Why is that? So think it through with me. What does any society have to have in order to be a society in the first place? Okay? What gives society its social order? From wherein is social ordering derived? That's been a central question for sociologists and cultural anthropologists for over a century. And the answer, interestingly enough, lies in what the sociologist Emil Durkheim called the sacred. And the sacred, simply put, involves those rules, understandings, and goals that are considered absolute and unquestionable. In other words, every social order, no matter how complex or simple, every social order always revolves around a set of beliefs or institutions or people that are set apart from everything else in that they're considered indubitable, unquestionable, absolute, inviolable. And this sacred, historically speaking, was generally constituted by what we call the major religions of the world, in that these religions function to create lasting societies and civilizations. Now, the sacred is essential because without it, there's no basis for social fusion. There's no alternative centripetal force to bind together the infinitely variegated constituents of society. The sacred by its nature evokes a common sense of faith and trust that enables different people to come together and become a unified whole in some way, shape, or form. The sacred is what gives society its social order. Now, the reason why this is so important, because it at least in part explains why traditional societies rooted in the sacred are so protective of the traditional family, as well as faith and community and culture and custom, but most especially the family. And why is that? Because the family is the primary institution by which the new generation learns they are obligated to people, beliefs, and institutions that they did not personally choose of their own accord. Because our parents, or the place in which we're born, or the culture into which we're born to, the faith that is our right by inheritance, these things are not things we choose. These things chose us. It's called a civilizational inheritance. And it's the traditional family that is the indispensable social unit that conveys this notion that we are morally obligated to people, beliefs, institutions, civilizations that we did not choose for ourselves. And therefore, these people's beliefs and institutions, they have the capacity to shape our choices, which is where we get the term virtue from. Virtue refers to learning to love what we ought to love and desire what we ought to desire so we can experience our highest human flourishing. This is why traditionalists are so protective of the family. without the traditional family, the notion that we are morally obliged to anything that we haven't chosen for ourselves breaks down. Putin alluded to this when he blatantly said there's no conceivable substitute to the traditional family in terms of how it functions as the foundation, the bedrock of a flourishing social order and civilization. Family teaches us that we are morally obliged to others irrespective of our having chosen them for ourselves. And therefore, those obligations are able to shape and form our choices. This is precisely where progressivism breaks down. This is precisely where HGTV shows us how leftist liberalism has no future. The University of Michigan anthropologist Roy Rappaport recognizes. Very interesting. He noted that modern secular society was doomed because it simply didn't have the necessary religious resources to sustain itself. At its foundation, modern society self-consciously replaced the sacred with scientific rationalism, okay? Modernists believed that we no longer needed religion. All we needed was reason. That was it, particularly in the form of scientific rationalism. The problem is that scientific rationalism is itself rooted in what's called an epistemological doubt or skepticism. Scientific rationalism begins in doubt, which is then supposedly somehow dispelled when applying the scientific method. But you don't have to be a genius to figure out that if your whole worldview is rooted in doubt and skepticism, eventually people are going to start applying that doubt and skepticism to the worldview itself. So this is why modernity fails at its very root. It has no sacred, and therefore it has nothing that is indubitable, nothing that's absolute or unquestionable, worthy of protecting, and therefore it inevitably falls victim to its own skepticism and doubt. And now what are we finding? We're finding that in redefining the family as a mere lifestyle choice, as a mere contractual relationship of choice that could involve same-sex couples and throuples or whatever, by redefining marriage in a totally choice-based institution, left-wing progressives are now actively undermining the only institution that can promote and perpetuate the notion that we are morally obligated to that which we didn't choose. And in so doing, they have effectively eroded the very moral basis for their own liberal progressivism. I don't know how many of you saw this, but this is coming from the BBC. A police officer by the name of Harry Miller was accused of tweeting out a bunch of supposedly transphobic tweets. And as a result, he actually got visited by police officers. And he was told that though he didn't technically commit a crime, his file would show that he perpetuated what they called a hate incident. Now, this whole issue ended up in court, and the court sided with Harry Miller, that his civil rights, particularly the rights of the freedom of speech and expression, they were violated by that police visit. And what I found so interesting about this case is how there seems to be such a massive backlash against the whole LGBT push to legislate itself over our lives. In other words, people are actively saying to the LGBT world, you have no right to morally obligate me to your norms. Go ahead and live your life, but don't think for a moment that you have any basis to morally compel me to adopt your worldview, because you don't. And gang, this is going on in Britain. This isn't, Texas. This is good old progressive Britain. So if you're seeing a backlash against progressive LGBT liberalism in Britain, I mean, that's saying something here. So I think we are seeing the beginning of the end of progressive liberalism. And messing with the family, it messes with the very social institution by which moral obligations are transmitted to the next generation. And without any way of intelligibly communicating moral obligation, progressive liberalism will inevitably find itself on the ash heap of history forever. Now, before you go, we just uploaded a very important video on the coronavirus and how it is absolutely destroying Chinese globalism. Remember, there's more than one version of globalism out there. There's a Western version, but there's also a Beijing version as well. And the coronavirus is doing enormous damage to the Beijing-centered globalism. I think you'll find it a very enlightening discussion. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.